This is the kind of profiles I would get. So they've done some persona, but the persona has no connection with all the artifacts. I know right in my mind that this person is a junior level person.
Just let me quickly introduce him. Bhaskar is a UX designer with 5 years of experience, and he's currently working at Pegasystems for a year now, I think. And he has joined college community back in November 2020, where he was a part of the intensive program as a student. But now he is a qualified mentor of the community, and again, one of the most well-known person. So let's hear from Bhaskar. The stage is all yours, Bhaskar. Over to you.
So today I'm going to talk about more about UX portfolio, and then how can we use individual artifacts just to crack into our dream jobs, right? So to quickly start about what we will be going through. So our goal is what is UX portfolio, right? And what is a persona and how should it be in the context of portfolio, and how can we actually enhance that specific persona or even any artifact. So the framework what I'll be talking about is applied to all the artifacts. So now if we look at it, it's just an documents, or it's a collection of documents of what we have done, like a bank, right? So it's a bank of all the projects. Now who will be looking at this, or why are we creating this, right? We want to move on to your next job, right? Or who will actually see this portfolio? It's the hiring manager who is responsible in different companies, right? When the person is looking at it, so what are the top 3 things that a person is looking at in the portfolio, right? So how well is the portfolio organized? Problem solving skills of how the person is solving the problem using these artifacts. And the most important thing is connectivity of the whole artifact sequence or the whole portfolio, right? Now, if we look at all these things, how much does a hiring manager spend in it, right? So it's very, very short time, right? And it turns out that it is just 30 seconds that a hiring manager would go through or skim through your whole portfolio. All the artifacts, all the connected, all these 3 major goals needs to be met in this very, very short time, right? Now, when we look at each artifact, so I am going to focus on persona. What is a persona, right? It is more towards we are documenting, it is there, goals, the needs and all. So now why do we do this? We want to actually empathize with users. We want to have empathy for the users and then identify goals and all. And then we want to focus on those all goals just to create all those screens or even experiences towards it. And the final thing is we want to prioritize how we release our features to the end users, right? This is what, and there are multiple things to do personas, but these are the high 3 level things just to focus on it. Now, when we look at one example each, and we focus on the framework that we have identified, the 3 major goals that we need to achieve in the 30 seconds. So let's take this persona. So there is an image and there is just a description about it, and we get to know limited details about it, like limited time, and they are prioritized, right? Limited time, tight budget, few of the components are prioritized. Now, if we overlap the 3 major goals that we have identified with details, so visually, I think there is some problem in it, right? And then if we look at the problem solving skills, now to just identify problem solving skills, it's not just the persona, it's about the whole document. So if we look at the whole document, so it is more towards there is a competitive analysis above and there is a brainstorming component below about it. Now, if you look at it, how is it connected to the above and before, right? If you look at it, there is no connection established, why there was a competitive analysis and how is user personas done after competitive analysis, right? That component is not reflecting to identify the problem solving skills there. Now, even if you look at all these things, like the problem and the personas, and now if you see the artifacts they have produced or the features, So everyday new ideas. And then there is a well categorized recipes. Now, just to figure out how are these related to the user personas and the problem, it's a tedious task to be done in 30 seconds, right? Which is why I think even connected and relativity of artifacts is exceeding the 30-second limit for this persona. Now it's the same thing. Let's take the example 2. Now, if you look at it, so it has demographics, it has the personality traits, it has goals and motivation, which is documented, but still in 30 seconds, is it really scannable if we overlap the same framework? So it's not actually scalable in 30 seconds, right? What is it that we want to take away from this persona? And even if you look at other contextually, the top and bottom of it, there are key insights derived from research, and there is user stories after the personas. So how are they really connected? That connection points are still not scannable or are not there yet, right? Which is where the problem solving skills cannot still be identified in it in that 30 seconds. Now, if you look at the features, what they have done in the whole UI, right? So it says progress bar, it says subscription, it says profile, it says navigation bar. Now, why is this navigation bar really required, and how is it connecting back to any of the goal and motivation? That connection is still not established, where I mean, the hiring manager has to still spend a lot, which is where it is bound to fail, right? So now if we look at all the personas, we are actually looking at three major things which are lacking in most of the personas which are available, right? Now, how to enhance or how to actually follow short tips to actually make those goals, right? Now, when we try to execute the same skills, it's not in the same sequence, right? When we are creating it, it's the other way around, right? How do we establish the connectivity? It's by prioritizing the information first of what to include in a portfolio or in an artifact, right? And then what skills do we want to showcase for that specific role, or for any role, for our dream job role, like an interaction designer or a visual designer. And then how can we actually enhance that thing using our visual presentation skills? Now, for each component, let's say prioritization information. So these are the 3 bigger tips that can be followed. So the first thing is like frame a storyline where it is very important for us to understand why an artifact is necessary to solve that problem, right? And then comes the second part, where what is the reason why are we including a persona into the portfolio or any other artifact? So the reasoning should be connected to the problem statement as well as the before and after artifacts that we are including in the sequence, right? And the outcomes that we have derived from that artifact or from that exercise that we have done. So now what happens is that, so let's say user persona is there. So you have done user persona to empathize. So what did you observe, or what is your key takeaway from that you are proceeding with the next steps of problem solving? So you have empathized, you have found out key insights, and based on those insights, you may be prioritizing your workflows, you may be prioritizing your experiences, right? So that component needs to be reflected in your sequence of the portfolio, and that's how you prioritize the information. And now, what skills do you focus on? So this is the key thing which even I have learned. So it's more like the stronger your skills, or the stronger skills that you add into your portfolio or you reflect it, that's where it will be very easy for us to defend or even portray the skills when you are not really there in front of the hiring manager, right? And then, so how will you highlight, or what are the components that you can communicate those skills? So let's say you have done a user persona. Now, how have you figured out that user persona is very much related to the problem that you are solving? That reasoning, if it is there, it becomes much more easier for the other person to understand, okay, you have something in mind, that you have executed this artifact. That connectivity will be established, right? And any other interesting observation that is personalized for your specific project, if you have faced, if you include it, so it will be like an interesting point for them to understand about your perspectives. and how to actually use visual presentation skills, right? So what are this? So whatever the points we have discussed, like highlighting few things and all, if they are mostly scannable in under 30 seconds, that's where your visual presentation skills are really working out. It's not the arrangement of or the beautification of that artifacts or arrangement. It's about how scannable it is. And then what are the key highlights of your thought process that a person has to look for, the hiring manager. And then, so how we have compared the connectivity or interconnectivity of everything, that's how people scan. So we look at one thing and then we go back or go forward to the visuals that we have done and then verify whether those are actually reflecting, right, or the tallying with them. So now this connectivity can be established from start to end when you are actually sequencing the whole thing. So if you follow these three key areas just to have these three main goals when you are doing your portfolio, it will be actually a next level portfolio, and it applies for all the artifacts. So let's say for user persona, for journey map, why was there a need to do a journey map, right? So this was the reason, or this was the fact that I observed and I had to execute journey map. And then these are the things, key takeaways from my journey map. If you just mention these three things, right? And even if it is a wireframes, right? Why do we do a wireframe, right? In this context of this problem, and what were the key takeaways? You have figured out really well of how the design widgets will connect. So that key components, when you add it in your portfolio, it will be like a next level portfolio. And I think that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Bhaskar. And I think right now we can open up for Q&A and general discussion.
Depending on what job you're applying for, a different type of presentation would work. If you're applying as a junior level person, then, I mean, as a hiring manager, all I'm looking at is, okay, they've done some persona. I mean, this is the kind of profiles I would get. So they've done some persona, but the persona has no connection with all the artifacts. I know right in my mind that this person is a junior level person. Then the next level, if you could go to your 3 criteria, Bhaskar, that is actually very interesting. Yeah. Then I'm saying, okay, so if I see that the persona is somehow connected to the problems you're solving, okay? So the question that I'm asking is, okay, how is this problem unique to this persona? That is the question I'm asking the people. And if it is obvious to me, then I can say, okay, this person has strong conceptual skills because they're able to think about it. The third level is if I can see in each of their artifacts how it is connected to their persona. I can tell these guys are senior level guys because they have strong conceptual skills, they have strong execution skills, and they are able to showcase how they solve the problem. So the whole thing is connected. So I can tell that they can be very strong individual contributors or senior level folks where they are supporting other people. So my take on Bhaskar's presentation is, I would say, depending on the level of seniority that you want out of the job, you should do the persona according to that, right? So if you are doing only one, probably it's junior. If you're doing 2, you're probably like, okay, I see. If you're doing 3, then I know you are probably lead level material.
I just wanted to know what is that scenario where we can kind of skip the user persona? Are there any real-time scenarios where we need not actually do a user persona? Just curious to know that.
There can be multiple scenarios where you can skip user persona, like based on your time, right? How will you prioritize? Let's say you have a task. Now, if it is asking like to do a visual design or a UI or modify or redesign a UI, so then why do you even need a user persona, right? That's where you don't need a persona, right? That's one use case. Whereas if you are trying to do a research task, even then, so why do you even need a persona there, right? It is where you identify user groups first, and after research, you try to derive a user persona from those insights.
Thank you, Bhaskar, for lovely presentation. So I have 2 questions. Like, how can we connect user personas with while doing scenario mapping or like while using into user journey?
Intensive question.
And second question is, how many potential personas, we need to showcase in a case study for the portfolio? So those two questions.
So, okay, I'll answer the second question first and I'll come back to the first question later. So how many personas, right? Now, what is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? And what is the need to actually empathize with users users in your problem statement? So it can range from 2 to even 10, right? There is no fixed at all. Even if it depends on the process that you're executing or the reason for why you have to execute the persona. And it can be 10 personas, let's say. Even in that case, when you are creating a portfolio, right, you need not include all the 10, right? You can just say that you have done 10 personas to identify this or to empathize with these users. My goal was this, to do 10 personas, and from 10 personas, these are the insights that I have derived. Yeah. Now your first question, can you repeat that?
How can we connect user personas while we are doing scenario mapping or into user journey?
You may not need journey map, or you may not need scenario map in your specific problem statement, right? But if you have identified that it is really necessary, then the shortest step is like you have identified behavioral persona, you have identified faces of all the personas, right? Faces generally means you are actually doing journey map, right?
Yeah.
In journey, you have identified how they are navigating to different experiences, right? Now you have a list of experiences. In those experiences, what are the possible scenarios that a user can do? Because you already know what are the goals of the users there. What are they trying to achieve?
Yeah. I mean, it has to correlate with the problem statement all the time and with the goal.
Yes.
So
you have identified needs, core problems, outcomes.
Yeah.
You have an outcome what a user is trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Now that you relate it back to the experience, and that's where you connect back those things.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks.
Let's say we have some understanding of the user group and personas, but in our research, we identify problem that we have not discovered initially. So now if we are adding our previous understanding of user, and then later after research, what we did and how we did and what problems did we discover, right? Isn't it increase the length of the your portfolio? As you said, it should be 30, but the scannability should be covered in 30 seconds. User personas, because I have in my portfolios never added personas. So I want to understand what impact does it hold?
So again, what role are you applying for?
Let's say researcher, senior researcher.
So now why should you showcase your persona skills?
In order to show the hiring manager that you have considered a persona and start smiling. Okay.
I think no, the reason I'm smiling is what Bhaskar is asking. You really don't need a persona. Unless you're trying to showcase, this is the kind of artifacts my research has informed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or, because I did this, it had so much impact. If you're trying to show, again, it depends on the story you're trying to tell. So when you're applying in research, again, what are the core things that you want to tell that are your biggest successes? That's what you want to talk about. If persona is not a big part of your picture, you don't have to talk about it. We
majorly talk about outcomes, isn't it? An outcome could be anything, if my understanding is right. It could be the impact it made in maybe numbers, or we identified something about users. Yeah. So it can be an outcome like that. Or you can say, listen, we identified, based on the research, we identified this one unique persona, okay, that we were not looking at. And when we started designing for this persona, this is the impact we saw on the product. Now that tells me that as a researcher, you have the ability to kind of identify those, those insights that will help me improve my business. Or, ultimately, if you think about research, the key question that you're trying to answer as a researcher is, how are you as a researcher generating insights that are helping the business grow? Right. Correct?
And if persona is part of the journey, absolutely talk about it. If not part of the journey, then why talk about it? You know, the key thing is people who are, and this is what I again mean by junior, mid-level and senior level folks, okay? The junior level person will just take a checklist and say, I have to do a persona, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, and they'll do everything. Okay. But when you are a mid-level person or above, you are being very careful. You are asking the question that Bhaskar is asking. Why should I present this information? What is the benefit of this? What am I trying to communicate? Okay. And if you don't know why you're trying to communicate that, don't put it there, which is what you're doing, Neha. You're not putting your persona everywhere, which is good because you're making that decision. There's no point in doing it here.
Got it. One last question.
Go ahead.
All right. So you showcased the persona which were not visually appealing and were not connecting to the problem, right? But what kind of persona should we include? Let's say talking about the intensive course, right? So we do persona based on phases, and we write all the needs and problems, outcomes, right? So should we just include, when we are making a persona, should we just include the phases that were related to the problem, or phases that were which we were focusing on?
Nail back or anchor back to your storyline. So why is it even necessary to communicate your persona, right? And then if it is really necessary and you have done 10 personas, so what is your key takeaway from your persona? That's all you want to include, because if you include everything, there are two major things that you are prone to. Either if you have done any mistakes in your personas, you will be getting identified, right? That's one thing. The second thing is, no one looks at that amount of data, right? Whatever we are doing, like in a sequence.
Yeah.
So what is the key component that you are trying to do persona for, and what are your key takeaways? These are the two components that you want to add. And the most important thing is that you have done artifacts as a process to solve a problem. Now those artifacts, when we are trying to put in our storyline on your portfolio, they can be modified. Like it modified means not changed, but prioritized information can be put here, and you can create a new entire new artifact for it, right? And the reason why I haven't communicated this is the idealistic artifact, because again that becomes a template, right? So if we focus on these things, it will be an open-ended thing where if you follow these things, you can create an entirely new persona which is solving some important problem or some reflecting your whole skill set for specific to that project, right? And you are most probably getting hired for it. So there is no idealistic persona that we have to follow like a template, right? We can create it. Did I answer your question?
You did, but I'm still like guess working here, because I just don't know the length of persona that should be there.
The point I was trying to make was the reason why we teach you in intensive to do step by step is so that you're looking at every aspect very carefully. Okay. Now, if you were to take exactly what we do in intensive and put it in your portfolio, it'll be very overwhelming. Okay. So you would never present information at that level. So what you are going to be doing is, for the specific problem, which I think is exactly what Bhaskar is saying is, for the specific problem you're solving, what is the relevant data that will help people make decisions? Okay. So the question is, the relevant data is this. So, you could say 5 different personas are all female. Well, if everybody is female, then why does it matter? Right? What is the difference between all of those? Saying, calling out the differences and calling out the similarities might actually be much more. So when you're looking at different personas, you should be able to say, okay, what is the key data that I have in this persona that is going to help me make a decision? So that's how you want to think about it. Okay. And if somebody asks like, okay, how did you reach this persona? You can always show your deeper persona or whatever, but otherwise just show the relevant stuff. So thank you very much, Bhaskar. This was a very nice presentation. It definitely helped us understand the nuances of it, and also look at all the key pieces of information that you need to put when you're talking about personas. So thank you very much, man.
Thank you for the opportunity.